to pull up the code on this computer because Visual Studio is not downloaded. However, I did get the class diagram instead, and we'll take it step by step. And we'll start with the Ruby controller class. So as you can see, the Ruby controller has plenty of the fields, and the methods are what use the fields. And we have that the change health method that comes from when Ruby comes into contact with either a collectible or the enemy. And whenever she comes in contact with an enemy, the change health method is called from the enemy controller within the untrigger enter method here. So anytime Ruby comes in contact with an enemy, she'll trigger this method, which will call upon the change health within Ruby to reduce her health by 1. And from there, you have the fixed update, which is also present within the enemy controller. And the fixed update pretty much is, it's when that is called every time when the previous iteration of the fixed update occurs. So no matter how long it takes for the fixed update to finish, the next one is going to start right afterwards. And that within the fixed update is pretty much getting her position, where she is, what key is being pressed at the time. Let's see, her position, where she's looking, and position, looking, and what key is being pressed at that time. That's what's being collected there. The launch method, that is for when she throws the cog disc. And you can see here within the projectile, that's also called over here. So anytime Ruby presses down on the C key, that method from the projectile gets called, and that will cause the projectile to be instantiated and gets thrown out. And we'll take a quick jump over to the projectile. It also has an untrigger enter method, and that's pretty much when the cog disc comes in contact with the enemy. It'll call the fix update. So yeah, the untrigger within the projectile calls upon the fix method within the enemy controller class to fix the robot. And going back to the Ruby controller, we have the play sound, and that's pretty much when Ruby is doing the collectible. When she collects the little fruit to heal her, it'll play a sound. And the start update, along with the start update within the enemy controller, it just means that it pulls information from the code and the inspector when the game first starts up, and it's only called one time. And the update within the enemy and Ruby controller, that's pretty much saying that every time a frame finishes, it calls upon the next iteration. So it's very similar to the fixed update, whereas the regular update, it does not have a consistent time of when it's finished versus the fixed update. So you have to be careful when putting methods and certain functions between the two, because you want the game to remain consistent as possible. And let's see, we'll check out the health collectible. It does have an untriggered enter, and that's pretty much referring to when Ruby comes into contact with the collider, the box collider of the health collectible. It calls upon the change health to increase her health by 1. And let's see, did I miss anything? We'll look at the non-player. So when Ruby goes up near to a NPC or the frog people, they have a method called display dialogue, and that function will be called upon from the Ruby controller. So Ruby, she will, when the key is pressed, when the X key is pressed, that method, let's see, I believe it's within fixed update. And when that method is called, it'll go to the display dialog from the non-player class, and display the text box as you saw within the game. And we also have an on trigger within the damage zone. I really didn't use that too much because I really didn't want to incorporate the spikes on the ground. So, but in this case, the on trigger stay is when Ruby comes into contact with the spikes. It will call the change health within her class to reduce her health by 1. And we also have the UI health bar, and as I said before, start, it pulls the information from Ruby, and just to get the information when the game first starts up. The set value is how much health she has. It pulls that from the Ruby controller over here. I believe it will get the health property. And the awake is when the that's also when the game first starts up. Oh wait, no, awake is always happening when the game is running or not running, and the start is when the game is first running. And that is pretty much it for the code.